The following program contains the opinions of the host, guests, and call-in participants. These do not necessarily represent the views of this show's distributors or sponsors. This program may contain obscene, profane, or otherwise objectionable language. Viewer discretion is advised. I should turn the camera on. All right. It's a 20-second show. Fuck you. What the hell? All right. The camera's on. That's my giant head. It's 11:03 on the East Coast, 8:03 on the West Coast. We got started a minute late today because the antenna, you don't want to know. I'm not even going to bother you. I'm Jim Peters, and you're watching Jim Peters Tonight. Now you're watching it before you just watching a placard card. There you go. It's Tuesday. It's September 19th. There, I did it. I figured it out. So let me tell you what's new in our world here. We promoted this about a month ago, I think, maybe, but we finally nailed him down. I screwed this up. I thought I alienated this guy. Turned out I didn't. Turned out he's just busy as hell. Dr. Patrick Moore is going to be on our show on Thursday. He's the guy who wrote the book Fake Invisible Catastrophes and Threats of Doom. He's probably arguably the biggest and most qualified climate change denier in the United States. He was one of the founders of Greenpeace, and yeah, he really was. We're not talking about sitting at a desk. He was out in those damn boats chasing the whales. He did all that stuff, and that was about 35 years ago. And slowly, according to him, and I'm sure he'll talk to us about this too, Greenpeace morphed from a noble organization that was trying to help the environment to just some giant debacle of a business, a money grubbing corporation. And he quit. And he simultaneously with quitting, he realized that all of this climate change stuff was bullshit. He's a climatologist by profession. That's what he does. So he wrote a book. It's about 150 pages long. I mean, when he's on here on Thursday, we're going to put the link up. If I can't stress to you enough, you should read this. This guy is so good at explaining why all of this is bullshit. And the thing is, the book is a little scientifically dense. I don't think it's beyond you at all, especially you, dear viewer, who watches the show. Maybe some other people. I don't know. It might be a little complex. He does talk about science, and there are graphs and charts in there. But no one does a better job debunking this whole thing. I mean, it's like, he is of the opinion, like I've said too. It's not so. And the thing is, I've said climate change is real, but the ramifications of it are complete crap. I've been rereading his book. I'm not certain he would even agree that climate change is real. And the thing is, technically it isn't. I've said this before. Technically, what we're going through is a long-range weather cycle. That's what's happening, and weather cycles can last 30,000 years. Now, weather is separate from climate, but it's really it's very difficult to kind of explain the difference, but it is. And so, but at any rate, he will explain it to you. He will have it all for you. And we're gonna pre-tape on Thursday morning. We're gonna run his interview on Thursday night. I can't tell. I'm thrilled about this. I interviewed this guy about a year ago on one of my radio shows. It's a signal. I got more feedback and commentary on this interview than anyone I've done in years. I'm not kidding. That's the reason I wanted to announce so much. You will enjoy this. And you folks on Rumble will enjoy this too. I have to also have a shout out to the people on Rumble. We had Jazz Shaw on again last week, and once again the numbers of his. I think right now we have 1,500 people watch the show. I think so far. something like that. 2,500 watched his previous appearance, and so he's well liked, and we don't blame people for wanting to watch him too. So today, oh please call me up, okay? Right here. Jimatnight.com/call, right? You got that? So here's the deal. We take video phone calls on the show. That's it. You don't dial in with your stupid cell phone or your landline or whatever the fuck you got in the house. you you dial in. You can dial in with you can call in with your cell phone, and just like FaceTime, you go to that URL, you go to jimatnight.com, and it's the call in is at the top of the menu, and click that, and then there's a giant blue button at the top of the screen, and all you have to do is click it. Next thing, you're in a preview screen. You get to check out your camera and mic, or choose them if you have more than one or whatever. Get your hair fixed all nice and shit, and you push the join button at the bottom, and you're in the queue, and I put you on the air. Now we have had callers, not a lot. We've been this, like I said, this is our 22nd show. We've been doing this now for 7 weeks. Okay, so we have had callers. I've asked every single person to call in how hard it was to call in. Everyone says easy as pie. It really is. It's totally freaking easy. And the other thing I have to tell you too, and this is important to a lot of you people, one of the reasons I'm starting to realize people are hesitant to call in is they actually don't want their face on the screen. You don't have to do that. On the pull down menu where you choose your camera, and even if you only have one on your device, there's always another option, and that's no video. And you choose that, and your camera's muted. And then we just hear the audio from the mic on your phone or wherever you're calling from, your desktop or whatever, your laptop, So it's really simple. If you do choose no video, you can have the option to upload an avatar or a picture, and you can upload anything you want. Guy named, I can't remember, was Johnny, was it? He uploaded, it was something, I can't remember what it was, but you can do that, and I appreciate it because this is a visual medium. I've gone on about the fact that I'm kind of a radio guy at heart, although I've done television before. I did a talk show on public television here in Minneapolis for about 3 years in the early 2000s. I've done and so now I'm doing television. And when we started this, I thought, oh, let's do a radio show, let's do it. But amazingly, it's way harder to broadcast audio only on the internet than it is video. It's not even a technical issue. It's more of a commercial issue. There's way more demand for video, and therefore there's no real outlet. There's only 2 places where you can or 3, I'm sorry, where you can broadcast audio. And we had just dumped our previous podcast host, and as I told you last night, we're in the process of setting up with another one. And I thought maybe we'd have that done today. We don't, but we should have it done very shortly, certainly by Monday, if not tomorrow. Okay, so usually, if you've never watched this show before, usually now this is the part where I talk about the damn liberals and you know and, the crazy news media. But I'm not going to do that tonight because I did that all night last night. Never got around to the UFO stuff. That's the other thing we talk about here. I'm known for 2 things: conservative news analysis, and UFOs and paranormal news. So we have a whole night planned of UFO news. That's what we're going to do. And I want to start it. One moment. Before we get into this, I want to bring something up here. So we had a guy named Chris Williamson from the Vanish podcast on 2 weeks ago tonight. And he talked about Amelia Earhart and D.B. Cooper. And he even mentioned a guy named Eric Ullis, who's an investigator, a D.B. Cooper investigator. Now, he talked about this on that show, if you want to go back and watch it. But he didn't know this was actually happening. On the day we did the interview on that two Tuesdays ago, Ullis actually tried an experiment. Now, I don't know if you guys know this, and Craig talked about this at length. So the thing is, none of the money that DB Cooper was given when he jumped out of the airplane was ever found, except for $5,000, which was found buried on a sandbar in the Columbia River. Now, and that's it, just $5,000. And they, believe me, they have scoured and dug up that damn sandbar for high heaven for years and years, trying to find any more of it. It was basically like in 4 or 5 clumps of $1,000 bills or something like that, and it was almost completely disintegrated, but there was enough of the bills there to get the serial numbers so they could check it. Because obviously they gave Cooper the money, but they obviously had a bank log the serial numbers ahead of time, so they could. And none of the number, as far as anyone can tell, none of that money ever made it into circulation either. Now the FBI, their likely scenario is that Cooper died either when he hit the ground parachuting or shortly after walking through the forest, one or the other. There's evidence to indicate, of course. Well, not no. What am I talking about? He did. He buried the money. Somebody did, you know. So somebody buried a small amount of money. So what this guy did is he actually tried walking from that sandbar. He walked the 11 miles to the Vancouver, Washington bus station, Greyhound bus station, and he took a bus back to Spokane. Is it Spokane? Let me see. Hold on. I think it is Spokane, Washington, and basically his theory is that's what Cooper did. He wanted to see how hard that 11-mile walk would be, and he said basically it was arduous, but not impossible at all. Now the other guy who just jumped out of an airplane in a rainstorm could do it. I don't know, but he did it, and he said he bought the bus ticket, and he traced what he thinks are Cooper's route back home. That's what he did, and he said it was successful. And in the interview we did with Chris Williamson, or Craig, I'm sorry, Craig Williamson, he alluded to the fact that he knew that Ellis was going to do this. He didn't know it was going to be literally the day we did the interview. He didn't know. Now Williamson's going to be back on the show, and we actually have. I'm going to give you a little teaser here. November 22nd, Thursday, is the 60th anniversary of the JFK assassination. That Thursday is also Thanksgiving, so we aren't doing a show on Thursday, but we're doing a show the night before on Wednesday night, the 21st, and we're going to have a big blowout show regarding the JFK shooting. And Williamson's going to be there. We got a couple other. We're putting together a big panel. Nice discussion. We'll eat some turkey legs. I don't know. Anyway, I wanted to get that out of the way about the fact that this guy did this because Williamson talked about it on our program here. So there was UFO news today. I wake up in the morning, and because we do this show late, I sleep late, and I've always been this way. Basically, I take the mornings off. Most people take the evenings off. I take the mornings off, and I work in the afternoon and the evening. That's kind of I've been doing this for a long time. I was a professional musician, so I always worked at night, and my body's kind of wired to this at this point. So I don't really start checking the news till about noon, and then I start formulating in my in my stupor. I start formulating what we're going to talk about tonight. So it was the normal news, Biden's a criminal, blah blah blah. That was pretty much what was going on today. So in other words, it was a relatively slow news day. And it's a slow news day when Fox News starts to pound the border shit because that means they don't have anything else. But there was one piece of news that I did find on the Fox News website that really intrigued me. And here is the headline. The headline is Accusations Fly Over Alleged Secret UFO Program Cover-Up. And what this is about is that a bunch of a bunch of congressmen led by Tim Burchett and Nancy Mace sent a letter I got to get this right, to the Intelligence Community Inspector General. Now, believe it or not, that's an actual title of some guy. It sounds like it's just bullshit, but it is. They wrote here the Inspector General of the Intelligence Community. It's actually the Intelligence Community Inspector General, the ICIG. That's that guy. And they asked him because Grush told them in the public hearing, he said, that we have these crashed spacecraft, we have these bodies, but I can't tell you any more in the public setting. I will tell you more in private. Apparently he did. So they wrote a letter to the ICIG asking for an audit of what was going on. And basically they got a 4-page letter back that blew them off. That was basically the deal. Uh, Let me read the actual quote here, the important part, which is at the very end of the letter. The Inspector General of the intelligence community said it is that we have not conducted any audit, inspection, evaluation, or review of UFO allegations as raised by David Grush. That's what they said. Yeah, so they had nothing. Matter of fact, basically, the lady said they basically didn't bother to look. And Burchett, who's basically leading this charge in Congress, he's furious. And do you blame him? Every step of the way, when Congress has asked for information, they seem to get stonewalled. And I hate to say it, and I made these parallels before, and this is one of the reasons I'm so fascinated with this topic. It's kind of like the same thing with the Biden bank records thing. It's like the Congress has had to pull teeth to get these records. Nobody wants to give them up. Sometimes I wonder what does Biden have on everybody? It's like you'd think, I mean, yeah, I think it's starting to crack now. There are people, this Ignatius guy in the Washington Post ran this article saying Biden shouldn't run. This stuff is starting to happen slowly but surely. But the thing is, the other question is, if he doesn't run, who runs? But anyway, I don't want to talk about that tonight. But the reason I'm bringing that up is because it's kind of the same thing. And one of the things that's fascinating me about the UFO topic, other than the fact that the freaking aliens are flying around, other than that is the way it meshes with the government and the press. I have been spouting this thing for 30 years that we have crashed extraterrestrial spacecraft. I've been laughed at and laughed at and laughed at. My friends, colleagues, people on the radio, listen, I've been laughed and laughed and laughed at. And then in 2017, um, New York Times and Leslie Kean publishes the article that says, "Oh, by the way, we're tracking UFOs," and all of a sudden it's like I mean, I have people who won't talk to me anymore. They were so convinced I was full of shit, and then it turns out I'm not. And but the other question, I brought this up many times, I will continue to bring it up. People ask me, "How did I know?" And here's the deal, the short answer, what you probably think is, "Oh, I had some sort of feeling or I had a gut reaction." No, it had nothing to do with that. It was government documents. Now here's the deal with this. There is no smoking gun that I've seen or anybody else has been able to produce that says the government knows there's aliens or that we have them or dead bodies or whatever. I haven't seen that's not been produced. Nobody's seen that. But there's plenty of documents to say UFOs are flying around. Plenty. I mean, it's like you can just take your pick. It's not like five. There's plenty of them. And it's like, okay, so the government's writing about this. If the Air Force and the military are writing these memos talking about this, well, shit, that's real. Now, the thing is, I will make the jump, and Christopher Mellon, one of the chief investigators who talks about this, he makes this jump too, because the thing is, like he says, the government, and when I mean the government, basically, specifically, I'm talking about the military. The U.S. military won't say the A word. They won't make the jump from extraterrestrial spacecraft to extraterrestrials, even though that's an obvious jump. If extraterrestrial spacecraft are flying around and they're not from here, well, somebody else is flying them, right? And they're machines. And that's the one thing, like Luis Alessandro said that on the ATIP program. That is, we're beyond the point now where we know these are real flying machines and they're flying around and they're not ethereal. They're not like somebody's imagination. They're not they might be interdimensional, but they're real machines. That's the thing. So we know that for a fact now. But like I said, there have been government memos flying around for the last 50, 60 years about this. And you would think, okay, well then if that's the case and Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi have been in Congress for 40 years, that they know this stuff. Actually, I think they do. That's the thing. I don't think anybody's ever talked about it. They for whatever reasons. Now, I'm going to go down ahead in my show notes here and talk about something else too. Um, the question is, why won't the government tell us? Now, like I said, there's these documents. The single I'll just give you one single example. The single most searched thing on the FBI archives website is there's a four-page memo from, I think the year is 1950, where some special, agent is writing back to the Home Office in Washington, D.C. Matter of fact, I think it's specifically addressed to J. Edgar Hoover. I'm not sure. I'm pulling this out of my memory here. And the memo basically says in 25 words, I'll sum it up. It says, "We've got this crashed extraterrestrial spacecraft and these three dead alien bodies. What do you want us to do with them?" That's basically what the memo is about. And it's the single most accessed thing in that entire archive, millions of documents. And the FBI's line, "Oh, it was a complete misunderstanding. It's just bullshit. No, there's not, no, so, people were misidentified." Crap, it was not. How stupid are these people? Not only that, they're not, they're, what was it? They're special agents. They're not regular agents. They ever wonder about that on, Mulder and Scully on the X Files? They're special agents. What makes them so special? Who are the regular agents? I don't know. Any rate, my point is, so why is the government so reticent to tell us? Well, there's a new theory floating around, and which I never thought of before. And let me see if I can actually read this here. Yeah, I'm gonna read this. And Tom DeLonge, the guy who used to be in Blink 182, who started the what is it called? The Fort To the Stars Academy. I'm gonna read a paragraph here. It's out of the mysteriousuniverse.org. Rocker and UFO researcher Tom DeLonge speculates on X, formerly Twitter, that the government may have kept UFO information secret, not from us, but from the extraterrestrials, so that they wouldn't know that we were aware of them. That's the new theory, is that it's not that the government doesn't want us to know. The government doesn't want the extraterrestrials to know that we know. But I would, at this point, my God, I mean, there's evidence that they monitor our media. Here's a good example. The big Belgian wave of triangle UFOs that happened in the 1980s. I think the years were 1986 and 1987. There were huge outbursts of this on March 31st of both of those years, exactly 1 year apart. So now this is pre-internet. And what day is after March 31st? April 1st, April Fool's Day. And how long did it take the news to get out of the newspapers? About 24 hours. And then you're wondering, what is this on purpose? Did they do this? Is this some sort of joke that both these things hit the newspapers on April Fool's Day? It's like, Christ. All right, that shows a little bit of sense of humor, but also shows that they know something about our culture. Now we don't have the black triangles have been seen by hundreds of thousands of people. I have seen one big, and just big as not even a house, big as a football field. I've seen one. And but the real question is, we don't actually have any proof that the extraterrestrials are running those. There's a good theory going on that those are actually spacecraft or aircraft run by the U.S. military, that they designed them. Uh, there's various theories. There's a guy who worked for the Lockheed Skunk Works who said they're actually what's called slightly heavier than air dirigibles. In other words, dirigibles like the Hindenburg. But then the Hindenburg blew up because it was filled with hydrogen. But it was filled with hydrogen because Germany didn't have any helium. We had the market on the helium. We had all the helium and we wouldn't sell to them. And that's why the Hindenburg blew up. Helium is completely inert. You can't burn it. You can't do anything with it. But it's still lighter than air. So you fill one of these giant aircrafts with this thing, and the idea is that this is the new theory, and because they always had trouble controlling those giant dirigibles. The new theory is that if you make the dirigible slightly heavier than air, and then use small rockets or motors to keep it in the aloft, you have much more control over it. And I understand how that would work. I mean, I know physics. That makes sense to me. And I've heard that it's an 80-20 proportion, or 90-10 or something like that. So you don't need a lot of fuel to actually keep it up in the air. And by doing that, you make it extremely much more controllable. Now, how these things zip off, go from basically 0 to 1,000 miles an hour, I can't tell you because everyone and the one I saw did too. So, but and every people report that. I can't answer that. I don't know if that goes into that purview as far as the dirigible thing goes, but I mean that is a theory. That's the theory. So, one moment. So, at any rate, they okay. So David Grush, appeared before Congress. He told Congress some stuff apparently in private. They went to this Inspector General of the intelligence community to try to get some information, and they were blown off. And Burchett and Nancy Mace, who's kind of hot by the way, and they're furious. They're furious, And do you blame them? So Grush talks about, and I had when I brought this up in a previous broadcast. I can't remember when, and a couple of my friends called me on this. They think I'm kind of full of shit, but I want to talk about this. Grush said that his life had been threatened over this. Now, if you know anything about the UFO lore and the UFO community, there are people supposedly who have been killed by the government for knowing some of this shit, or actually not knowing it, talking about it. I'm going to give you a couple examples in a second. And what's even more disturbing is the number of strange deaths that have happened that may not have been murder, or they didn't look like murders, but a lot of people who knew a lot of stuff died in unusual ways. And here's another thing. So, and I was trying to find this book tonight, to this afternoon. It's in my office. I've read it. It's called Hitman. It's by, oh God, who is the guy who just died? Who was the who played the guy on played Munch on? The guy who played Munch on Homicide and yeah, Life on the Street. Um, anyway, he wrote a book, and now I don't know if you guys know this. There were about 300 people in Dealey Plaza the moment that John F. Kennedy got shot in the limousine. Of those people, about it was I think the count was 78 of them died within 2 years. Which, if you use the regular death rate of the populace as a background, uh, oh God, what is his name? David. Shit. I'm not gonna Google it while I'm here talking to you. That's stupid. You would look at me Googling crap. David, what's the name? He said that they used a formula and figured out it was 16 trillion times more than the average death rate in the United States. And the amazing thing is, he published the formula they used in the book. That's the incredible thing. He said he was tired of reading all these damn statistics where people were talking about these odds, and then you don't know where they came from. So he published the whole formula they used in the book. And so yeah, 78 out of 300 people. That's way, way higher than what the average death rate in the US would be. There's been people who have died, uh, who know UFO shit, who've died in very unusual deaths. I'm gonna give you an example. One, the guy's name is Phil Schneider, and I've talked about Phil on this program before, but he's probably the most, now you don't need to believe Phil's story even to understand that he might have been murdered. Here's the deal. Phil says, and I think that this incident happened to him, I think in 1978. It was the late 80s, late 70s or something. Phil is a geologist and he works for the US government. Specifically, he works for the military, he works for the Pentagon. So his job is now, this has pretty much been verified by other people. What you don't know as an American citizen is that the U.S. military has underground bases all over the United States, especially the Western United States. Supposedly, a lot of them are even connected by high-speed maglev lines or rail lines. Supposedly, so, and not only that, the military actually has patents on giant boring machines. So apparently, they learned how to do this fairly easily. You get one of these machines underground, you turn it on, and it bores giant 60-foot wide holes, and it just goes and goes and goes. This is Elon Musk has a company called the Boring Company does the same thing. Apparently, he's perfected it even more. This is not a hard thing to do anymore. is to bore these tunnels, and tunnels can be turned into anything, you know. So barracks or rooms or whatever. So Schneider's job was to go into down into the earth to check out the geology of the places they wanted to drill these giant holes, these giant, you know, cascades or concourses, just to find out, to make certain that the underlying structure of the earth would hold these things up. That was his job. So he says he's in Dulce, New Mexico, I think it's 1978, and they're sending him down into a hole to check out some geology for these drillings. And they send him down in like an elevator cage. And he says when he gets to the bottom, he is confronted by three 7-foot tall extraterrestrial beings, which he had never seen before. He doesn't know what's going on. And he completely freaks out. And he said he always carried a gun with him because they ran into little vermin and varmints, little animals down in these places in case they had to shoot them. So he had a gun on him, and he said he totally freaked out, and just by reflex, he took his gun out and he shot one of them, and he said he killed it. And I'll use the word, I guess, you know, Soylent Green is people too. I don't know. I guess it's an it, you know. But he said at that moment all hell broke loose. And then there were, like he said, and supposedly, like Richard Dolan and other people have said, they have confirmed this, but no one will go on the record, that about 60 Marines got killed in this whole giant gunfight. And he almost did. And the guy who pushed him back into the elevator and got him back up to safety, that guy got killed. But the really weird thing is, okay, you can say, well, yeah, that's a wonderful story, and Phil has a great imagination. The weird thing is, Phil says that one of those extraterrestrials shot him with like a laser type beam and cut off 3 of his fingers. So now he's out giving lectures and he's putting his hand up, and you can see this on the internet. Although these videos are quite grainy, they're in standard def. Uh, you know, because well, he died a few years ago. That's one of the story. He would hold up his hand. It's the weirdest damn injury you've ever seen. It looked like the tips of his fingers were melted off. I've never seen. I mean, I know people who have run their fingers through table saws. I've seen that before. This did not look like that. It's really, really creepy. It looks like what would happen if you ran your fingers through a laser beam. That's what it looked like, and that's the reason. I mean, that's the reason I believe the guy. It's like I don't know where else you'd get that sort of injury in like real waking life. I don't know. I mean, maybe somebody knows. If you do know, seriously, call me. Call me at jimatnight.com. Go there and I click the big button at the call-in screen, because I'd like to know. I've never seen an injury like this before, and that's the reason I believe the guy. Other than that, it could be complete bullshit. But Dolan and others in the UFO research community have said that there's people in the military who have confirmed the story, that there was a giant, basically a gunfight. And the reason that the extraterrestrials were down there is because they have a base down there. They have bases underground, supposedly all over the U.S. too. And what was really, really weird is Schneider said he found out later from some of his military cronies that the government knew they were down there and they never told them, which is that's creepy. I mean, like, whatever, you know. Okay. So you send people down to certain destruction, you know. Why would you do that? Especially if all you want to do is dig holes. Maybe that's not true. Maybe they didn't know they were there, So supposedly, I mean, now this is lore at this point, that the U.S. military did not build that base in Dulce, or alternatively, they built it with the cooperation of the aliens. But supposedly, after that gunfight, that cooperation ceased. And there's another thing. You fast forward that, I think maybe about, was it 10 or 20 years? They exploded a nuclear bomb as a test underneath the ground, very close to that site. And a lot of people think they did it literally to flush the aliens out, that it was not just a mere test. And to this day, you can't go anywhere close to that site where they were drilling because it's still radioactive. It's not just closed off; it is actually radioactive. You'll get sick if you go there. So you can't go. And and so anyway, so Phil goes on this speaking tour. He's decided he's going to tell the public about this, and he told several people in public at these lectures. He said, "If I ever turn up dead, let me assure you, it was not suicide." He said, "I know friends that have been murdered by the government, and they made it look like suicide." He said, if I'm ever turned up dead, let me assure you, it's not suicide." Well, guess what? About I think it was 1994, uh, Philip Schneider ended up dead, and it looked like suicide. And the amazing thing is, his autopsy photos are on the internet, and apparently supposedly it was audio what's it called autoerotic asphyxiation. That's what they try to make it look like. But people have seen these pictures. I don't know anything about this, but I've been told that people have seen these pictures, say some of those knots that he supposedly tied, can't be tied by one person. So, and also the photos are gruesome too. I mean, they really are. I mean, he's a very big blue man. But that's just a story. Yeah, I don't do I have any proof? No. But like I said, pardon me. Like I said, that's the weirdest damn injury I've ever seen. And if you can go on the internet, it's out all over YouTube. You can find these things too. He holds his hand up, and yeah, his fingers are melted off. It's like it's crazy. So I think Grush. I totally believe whether people have actually been killed. Obviously, I have no proof, but I certainly believe him that he's been threatened. Sure, I totally do. And it gets back to why. Why is it such an important story? So are we trying to keep a secret from the aliens? And the alternative is that the aliens have told us that you don't tell the public about this, or we'll annihilate you, or something like that. Supposedly, Trump was going to tell the public and backed off at the last minute, and he's alluded to this many times. So did Reagan. Reagan gave speeches about the fact, his famous speech at the UN is like, wouldn't what did he say? Wouldn't the whole world come together if it turned out we had a threat from uh, outside of this world? And doesn't that threat already exist? You know, you can look that up too if you don't know what I'm talking about. So, of course, the other thing that happened this week, or last week, basically, is that there was the Mexican legislature met to discuss the UFO issue, and this guy named Jamie Maussan, and Williamson and I talked about this too. No, Jazz Shaw and I talked about this on Thursday. Because it's so much bullshit. This guy named Jamie Maussan, he does a UFO show weekly on Mexican television. He's done it for 20 years. It's one of the highest rated shows on Mexican TV. People love it. Here's Massan's problem. He doesn't discount, or he has no skepticism whatsoever. Anything anybody brings to him is real. And he has shown some of the crappiest, stupidest videos, basically kites or something, that people say are UFOs, and he totally believes it. That's his problem. He has no credibility. So he marches into the Mexican legislature with these two glass coffins that he said have the fossilized remains of aliens in them. And okay, they look like aliens and they look fossilized. And guess what? Nobody believes him, including me. And Jazz was the same thing. We're both highly skeptical. The terrible thing is, here's the terrible thing: if these are real, that's awful because nobody's going to believe it. I At this point, if you told me that you ran DNA tests on he said that he's ran DNA tests on this shit, and say it's not human DNA, and there is DNA in there. If that's all true, still not going to believe it. This guy has such a terrible reputation that I simply I refuse. I just assume he's pulling some scam. It's awful. Ryan Graves, one of the pilots, one of the American pilots from the Nimitz who saw these things, he was there, and he said this is going to set us back a billion years. And he's right. He's absolutely right. Masan is also about he's done this at least 5 times previously where he's floated the fact that he has alien bodies and they turn out to be fake. It's you this is bullshit. It's like, that there this whole world has enough trouble. When I mean the world, I mean the UFO world has enough trouble with even credible evidence. 95% of all the reports ever filed with like MUFON are bogus. Now, it's not that people are lying. A few people are running hoaxes, yeah, but usually, I mean, they misidentify. There's things that they're either jets or balloons or something, and they're not only 5% of the cases that they had get reports on are actually worthy of consideration and investigation. And that's been true basically since going back to Project Blue Book. You can go back like 70 years, and that's the percentages pretty much remain the same. It's 5%. Only 5% of the reports are credible. All the rest of it's crap. But the thing is, you got 5%. That's and the weird thing is, Carl Sagan said extraordinary claims need extraordinary evidence. But we got another thing going on here too. If one single report is proven to be an extraterrestrial origin, we've proved the phenomena. That's the other thing. So you got 5%. So how many? I think in Project Blue Book, that 5% was 600 cases. And so if you definitively prove one single one of them, we're being visited. You know, that's another way to look at that too. So here's another question. Okay, and so I'm talking about this thing with Masan and these fake bodies. What happens if the bodies are real? You know, supposedly, they found bodies at Roswell. Suppose there have been many, many UFO crashes in the United States. I told you that my personal investigation, I came up with a figure of at least 6 and probably 9 or more. A guy named Michael Schratt, who writes for what's the name of the Aeronautics Weekly? Is that the name of it? I can't remember one of the trade magazines publications for military aircraft. He said he's tracked down. He said he's documented 110 of them that the military has captured. And supposedly since the 1940s, since shortly after Roswell, because apparently decided when Roswell happened that they needed to get their shit together on this. There's people in the military who said they belong to these special units that are set up all over the country for fast response to go get these spacecraft if they crash. So and the things they're fast. I gotta tell you, because there's many reports of the military showing up in like 5 minutes. That's I'm not kidding about that. That supposedly happens regularly. Now the thing is, they have the advantage because they're probably tracking these things through space, so they actually know kind of where they land. But still, that's supposedly happening, and there's people in the military who said they belong to these units. And based on what I know, that's probably highly likely. Now, here's the other thing. Okay, I'm a guy sitting at a desk in Minneapolis broadcasting on the internet. Why doesn't Congress know this shit? You know, it's like, and you could say, well, Jim, you don't actually know. No, I don't. That's true. I don't actually know. But the thing is, there's so many credible sources that have reported this stuff, and there's so many credible researchers in the UFO field. And yeah, there's a lot who aren't credible. That's true. The majority probably not credible. But I know the credible ones, the legitimate ones. And if Richard Dolan says he gets reports from people, he talks to people, and he especially if the reports basically, overlap each other, if they're basically identical, and he gets them from people who still don't know each other. And not only that, it makes sense. I mean, like I said, we know we have a few. I don't know how many. Sherratt says 110. Okay. He says, and he's documented. He put out a book. Matter of fact, I tried to buy the book. I gotta get I'm trying to get him on the show. Uh so the fact that they would have a rapid response teams all over the place makes total sense, because they want to get this shit before. I mean, there's really no uh, reason, a private party couldn't pick one of these things up. But part of the things that the military is really good at is intimidation. And let me talk about that for a second too. Uh, December 1965 in Kecksburg, Pennsylvania. Now, you probably haven't heard about this. Maybe you have. There have been television shows done on this. There's a movie called The Vast of Night that was a fictionalized version of the story. But it's pretty, it's keeps pretty much to the story. So, Kettsburg is a really small town. It's about 30 miles outside of Pittsburgh. On December, I don't know, can't remember the exact date, but December 1965, this thing, which apparently at first they thought was a meteor, got tracked by NORAD and other nations all across, like the polar, the Arctic region, and down into North America. This thing was flying, and they were tracking it on radar. So I mean, this is that's one of the things here. They know something crashed. Just like in Roswell, they don't know. Nobody really knows what, but they know something crashed. So this thing crashed in the woods outside of the small town, Kecksburg, PA. Now the really weird thing is that supposedly, and there were not only the radars from the radar people say this, but witnesses say this too. It changed direction. And if you know anything about it's impossible for meteors to do that. They just fly in and they crash. That's what they do. This thing apparently was going back and forth, and the people who actually saw it, about 20 people apparently actually saw it hit the ground, said it appeared like it was trying not to crash. That they said that it kind of hesitated in the air, and it's like so. There was some evidence that it was maybe intelligently controlled. So this thing crashes in the woods. And a bunch of townspeople there in Casper, they go into the woods to see it. About 20 people actually got within close proximity of this thing. It was by all the witnesses had the same description. It was acorn shaped, about the size of a small car. They said you could probably get one or maybe two people in there comfortably if there was anybody in there at all. It was completely solid and completely rivet free, except around the edge of the acorn at the bottom, there was what looked like hieroglyphics written. That's what they said. So they went down there and found it, and literally within minutes, the U.S. military showed up, and they were bossing people around. And that's one of the things, like I said, there's no real reason that and your Uncle Bob, your Uncle Bob could have picked this thing up and put it on the back of your truck. It doesn't belong to the U.S. government. It doesn't. But they intimidate people. You get out of here, we'll shoot you. All this sort of stuff. And they cleared the area, and they they came out of the forest with a flatbed truck, which looked like with a tarp over a thing that looked like what the witnesses saw, and they hauled it away. All right, there's a guy named Stan Gordon, and Stan Gordon worked for the local newspaper there. And what you guys don't know is 1965, even small newspapers were a big deal. Hell, radio stations were a big deal. I still remember the radio station in my small town. It was the media, man. We had it. I mean, it was like, I did a little work there as a kid. It was a big deal. Same with the newspaper. The town I lived in, Red Wing, Minnesota, supposedly was the smallest city in the U.S. with a real legitimate daily newspaper. And the other thing about Red Wing is that the National Editorial Association was started there. And Red Wing has a huge history in journalism, which I was more than happy to kind of ride on the coattails with. And then my family had some interaction, had some tie with the newspaper too. But I bring that, yeah. So Stan Gordon worked for the local newspaper in Kettsburg, and he did a report on it. There's also a guy named John Hughes, I think, who worked for the radio station. Now, the interesting thing is Hughes is no longer with us. Stan Gordon is, and I have a really big announcement to make here. He's going to be on the show, but he's agreed to come on, but he's booked up till January, so it's not going to happen till after the first of the year. But we're going to have him on the show. It's going to be fascinating to talk to him about this. And I told him, I said, I want to talk about Kecksburg, and he said, I know a lot more. I've been researching a lot more than that. I have a lot stranger examples of UFO shit. But the thing about Kecksburg, and this is the reason I brought this up, talking about the military. Well, there are two things. And like, what do they do to the bodies? Kecksburg is the best example of cover up by the US military and all this UFO shit because all these people in the town saw this object, now all being about 2 dozen. They all saw it. Hundreds of people saw it driven through the streets of Pittsburgh on a flatbed truck, and the military says still claims to this day it was a meteor. The other thing that's been floated is that, um, 12 hours before that, a Russian satellite, crashed to Earth, but that happened in Canada and happened 12 hours ahead of time, and, NASA has even come out and said, "No, it was not the Russian satellite." What their official line is that what crashed in Kecksburg is a meteor, and that's bullshit. That's just complete utter bullshit. That's not what crashed in Kecksburg. So they don't know if there are beings inside of this thing. They don't know that, but nobody knows. Nobody saw or heard anything, but they saw the spacecraft. They saw it sitting there in a gully. You know, I got one more story about what they do with alien bodies too. So you remember Richard Nixon? I can't remember what number he is, and I think was he 33rd president of the United States. I think something like that. And he resigned because of Watergate. But Nixon is a very, very interesting figure, both personally and historically. First of all, there's a lot of people who think he was evil. I used to think that many years ago. I'm starting to I'm revising my opinion now. Now I think that he wasn't really evil. He was just paranoid. Because what happened in Watergate, if we just want to very quickly go through this, so a bunch of guys from the Republican National Committee, they were called the plumbers because this is what they did. They broke into the office of the Democratic National Committee, which is in the Watergate apartment complex in Washington, D.C. That's the reason it's called Watergate. Watergate is not a building, it's a whole series of buildings. It's like Rockefeller Center, it's a giant, giant campus. So it's both offices and apartments and condos. So they busted into this thing and they got caught by the janitor. And people say that this was actually staged, but no, the way the janitor caught these guys, I don't think so. I don't think you could stage it. You'd have to be in cahoots with him, and he obviously didn't know what's going on. So these guys get caught and they get thrown in jail, obviously. And then this news gets to the president, and the president decided, here's the deal. In the alternative version of history, if Nixon had got up the next morning and did a press conference and said, all right, these guys from the Republican National Committee busted into the Democratic National Headquarters. They're in jail. I didn't know about this, which is true. He didn't know about it ahead of time. He did not. I didn't know about it. They're going to see the full hand of the law. La di da. Case closed. We would never even know about this now. We don't even be talking about it. Nixon would have written out his term, and fabulously. And the other thing is, other than Watergate, Nixon was a really consequential and highly regarded president. He did a lot of good things. He even did stuff that Democrats like. Nixon started the EPA. Nixon started Title IX. And this is not my idea. Bill O'Reilly's talked about this before, about the fact that the EPA is important because it forces companies to do shit that they wouldn't do under normal competitive pressure. And the thing is, I can go on and on about how climate change is bullshit, but like I've always said, there's a kernel of truth to all this stuff. And the kernel of truth in climate change is that everybody wants a cleaner planet. I want a cleaner planet. you know, I like the, I like the fact that emissions have dropped in the last 15, 20 years. I think that's great. No, we don't need this shit in the air. We don't. Now, is it going to fuck up the climate permanently? No, it isn't. But the thing is still, I'm not, my problem with the electric car thing is they're trying to push it down people's throat, irregard of market forces. That's my problem with it. But in and of itself, I think electric cars are a good thing. I was just telling my wife the other day, nobody knows this. People have forgotten about this. In the 1920s, there were electric cars. Not only that, there were quite a few of them and quite a few companies making them. Now it's a little different because we need lithium batteries, and you have to chain little Malaysian kids to the cave to get to get them to get it out. Well, I'm laughing. It's terrible. What's going on in the Congo. But so yeah, but I like a clean planet, so it's good. So I mean, you can thank Nixon for that. He did that. So there were a lot of accomplishments, but this one thing, and now, and I don't want to get off of this because, like I said, this is UFO night. But like the weird thing is, I hope you can see this all kind of ties together. Now we have a president who appears to be way, way more corrupt than Nixon ever was. Now, there's a story when Nixon, he said he got that famous press conference where he said, "I am not a crook," and the whole thing started to fall apart, and people started to realize, oh, he actually did do this cover up. And the famous story is Bob Dole, who was he was the Republican leader in the Senate Minority Leader, that he walked from the Capitol to the White House he walked to tell Nixon that he had lost control of the party, that he lost the support of the Republican Party, and that he should resign or else he was going to be removed. And that's when Nixon decided to resign. That's when he did. Is that story going to happen for Biden? No, it is not going to happen for Biden. Nobody, Chuck Schumer is not going to walk to the White House to tell Biden he's got to quit. It's not going to happen. They we could, it's like everyone said, how much there's a editorial cartoon out right now, like how much proof do you need that this guy is corrupt? I already said he's already met the legal definition of bribery. Even though they haven't shown him getting any money into his bank account directly, they have shown that his grandkids got money from foreign entities where they're 10 years old. They obviously did not have a job, and that is the legal definition of bribery. It doesn't matter if you get the money. If your family gets it or people that's bribery. That's corruption. There you go. It's done. You know? Now, supposedly, I'll just mention this quickly. We talked about this last night, and Jazz talked about this on Thursday. Supposedly, the rumor going around Washington, and now it's like an open secret apparently, is that James Comer, the head of the oversight committee, he has the smoking gun. They have it. They have a record of money going directly from a foreign entity right into Joe Biden's personal bank account. Apparently, they have it, and I even if they produce this, I've said this. I don't think they should go forward with impeachment. I don't think they should because they're never going to remove him. All they really need to do is show the fact he's corrupt as hell. That he will probably lose the election if they do that, because the at we have enough time now so that the mainstream media, as much as they kind of blew off the Hunter Biden laptop thing off, they will not be able to do it. I don't think they will. Not to mention that at this point, I don't think they want to either. I mean, that's already cracking, like I said before. So I think Joe Biden is in for a very, very bad 2024. And this is even before the election. Murray Sabrin and other people say we're still on track for a major recession. I think that's true. I think all the stuff's going to come out, and yeah, this is not going to look good for this guy. So okay, all right, one more. Okay, I got one more story here I want to tell you though, because this is about. I was talking about Richard Nixon, and the reason I'm talking about Richard Nixon is because what you probably don't know, is, believe it or not, Richard Nixon was a very unusual man. He was kind of introverted. I mean, I'll be blunt. He was a weirdo. He was, but he had a few friends. He had a friend named Bibi Rebozo, which from Florida. He also had another friend from Florida, and a legitimate friend, Jackie Gleason, the comedian. Gleason and Nixon were legitimate friends. They hung out all the time. Matter of fact, it was going to playing golf with Gleason was one of Nixon's great joys. Apparently, they had a great time, and Nixon wasn't exactly a comedian, so I'm sure he loved Gleason's presence. Gleason, what you don't know about Gleason is that at that time, this is like in the 1960s. No, it's it's about 1970 when I'm talking about. Nixon was elected in 68. Gleason had one of the largest private collections of UFO books and literature in the world. He was completely obsessed with the topic, and he constantly badgered, it almost became a joke apparently. He badgered Nixon to tell me about where the alien bodies are. So at any rate, Nixon and Gleason are playing golf, and it's Gleason's birthday. And they finished the golf outing, and Nixon says, "Are you gonna be home tonight?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "I'm gonna come pick you up. I got a surprise for you." And this is a strangest story, but apparently this really happened. So Nixon drives. He's got some sedan, not a government car. He drives over to Gleason's house and picks him up. Now Nixon's driving, and there are no Secret Service. You couldn't get away with this now for Adam. You could not do this. But it's 1970, and Nixon's driving, and he drives over to Gleason's house. They get in the car and they drive. And I can't remember what is it Holloman Airport Force Base? It's in the one that's in Florida. That's close to where they were at, and I think they were close to Orlando or something like that. I can't remember the name. I'm doing this off the top of my head, folks. And I refuse to Google why I'm actually talking to you. I just refuse. So, but anyway, but I got the story down. So they go to the Air Force Base, and Nixon drives up to the checkout station. Apparently, Gleason said you should have seen the look on the guys at the checkout station when they realize it's the president of the United States driving in. And he said, "Yeah, okay, all right, go ahead." Now, nowadays, I don't think even if if the president could drive, I don't think they'd let you in because they wouldn't believe it. I mean, there's so much deep fake shit, and it's so easy to masquerade. I don't even think they'd believe it now, but they did then. So Gleason said that Nixon took him to a hangar, and they went into a basement or something like that, and there was a bunch of glass coffins. And at first, Gleason said he thought he was looking at children, and then he realized through the haze of the glass that he was looking at extraterrestrials. And this fucking blew his mind. I mean, this is a guy who wanted this. His wife said he didn't eat for 3 weeks afterwards. He was completely discombobulated. And he told this story many times. Unfortunately, he never told. I don't think he ever told it to a reporter. His wife did, but he would tell this story on movie sets when he was working. So it's been. I mean, this was common knowledge, and he was completely blown away. So what do they do with the bodies? Well, they freeze them. That's what they do with them. There you go. That's what you want to know. So I got two things I want to end with here. Uh, One was the Rendlesham Forest incident, and there's a new wrinkle in this. Now, this happened in December 1980. UFO landed in a forest between Brentwater's Air Force Base and what is it, Ridgeway? I can't remember the name of them. They're both American Air Force bases in Britain, in the UK, and they're basically right next to each other. And the Rendlesham Forest separates them. And this UFO landed in the middle of the forest. Brentwater sent 3 guys out to look at it. And one was named Jim Peniston. He's the guy who got close. He got so close to it, he says he touched it. And he said when he touched it, he got a download of ones and zeros, which made no sense to him at all until 30 years later, until like 1990 or 2000, when somebody said, well, Pattison, the guy who was, or the guy who was with him, um, said, well, that's binary code. And, they have, he, he wrote it out, 16 pages of it. He wrote it out from memory right after this incident. He kept the pages for like 30 years. And they gave him to a computer scientist, can you get anything out of this? And the guy thought, oh, this is all bullshit. And he started to enter it. And yeah, not only did the message come up, the message is in English. And so, it's terrible. I'm talking about this, but I should have copied the message. I know it says exploration for planetary advance, continuous monitoring. There's uh, um, longitude and latitude in there of several different spots, all historical sites. One of them is Stonehenge. One of them is in the middle of the American desert, or New Mexico, all sorts of places. And then it's dated year 8600. Now, okay, all right, that could be bullshit, right? Pedersen thinks his theory is that, as a matter of fact, I didn't know this. Many years later, in conjunction with releasing the binary code, he undergoes regressive hypnosis, and he says that although he's not certain if he actually saw any aliens per se, but he said the message they gave him is that they're from the future, that they're humans from the future, and the real problem they're having problem Their problem is the world has kinda gone to hell, and all of us and they've lost a lot of their reproductive function, and so they are coming back in time to get sperm and eggs so they can reproduce in their time. Now, this is a really interesting theory because, like, I have a friend of mine who doesn't buy a lot of this shit. And that's fine. I mean, I'm the tinfoil hat guy. I know that. And I don't necessarily buy all of it myself. But he said a really important thing to me like about a year ago. He said, why are all why are these ETs all doing these damn anal probes? He said, how many anuses do you have to probe before you have enough data? And he's got a point. I thought the same thing. Everybody who says they've been abducted basically goes through the same medical procedure, you know? So if you're talking about hundreds of thousands of people, why do you need to do it that often? Right? It's like, how many anuses do you need to see? I mean, it's like, if you're a South Park fan, and I am, and people forget this. This was the pilot episode of South Park. Cartman gets an anal probe because Cartman gets abducted. It's funny as hell. What a great way to start a show, man. I mean, yeah, I'll buy it. I'll buy that show. 22 years later, how many episodes have they done? I don't know. It's still funny. I mean, it's really amazing. I mean, those guys have not burned out. But the theory is that, but Pennison is kind of floating, is that they're doing that because they need the sperm and eggs to reproduce in like 5,000 years in the future, you know, and that actually makes some sense. That that because I've wondered the same thing. That's never made any sense to me. Why do you need to anal probe so many people? How often, how many times do you need to do it before you realize, oh, the data's the same? There's shit in there. This is why you watch this show, because I'm a pervert. So, yeah, but that actually makes sense. It does. There's a reason. Yeah, if you're after sperm and eggs, there's a reason you do that. You're farming people basically. You know, I had to bring that up because I thought that was really interesting. And then I'm gonna end with this. I'm just going to read this. This was on in Mysterious Universe too. Here we go. Spoon-bending psychic Yuri Geller was showing around the blurred photos of what he claimed was a naked pregnant alien given to him by writer Whitley Strieber. Oh, we can spend an hour talking about Whitley Strieber too. I honestly don't know what to make of this guy. It's very famous. When he wrote Communion, he came on the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, and Carson was kind of a science nerd, and so Strieber sit down. I saw this in real time when it happened. Strieber sat down in the desk on the chair, and Carson said, "All right, we're going to talk about your book here. I just want to tell you and the audience ahead of time, I don't believe you." That's what Carson said straight to his face. He said, I think you made this up. I don't think this happened, but go ahead and tell your story. It was a really really gracious way for Carson to tell everyone. He thought it was crap, but he let Strieber talk, and he asked questions, and he didn't, but he started the interview out. He said, no, I don't believe you, and I never quite know what to make of Strieber either. Anyway, so so uh Uri Geller is showing around a blurred photo of what he claims is a naked pregnant alien given to him by writer Whitley Strieber when he was hit with a warning from Facebook about about showing photographs with nudity or sexual activity of aliens. What the fuck? Yeah. I've been poo-pooing Facebook for years. So I got off of Facebook about 10 years ago. I told I have no social media presence online. I refuse. I was quite involved in about 10 years ago. And then I said, well, fuck this. This is crap. And I got off. And I barely been on. I mean, I've maybe accessed my former account about once a year, like to get a telephone number or something. That's it. I'm not reading. I'm not posting. I'm not doing anything. So, but we have the show is on Facebook, and I set up a new account and a Facebook page to broadcast the show. And in setting up the page, Jesus Christ, their interface is a fucking mess. I mean, this is bullshit. I I I don't understand why people pay, even use this thing. It's terrible. Anyway, that's my thing here. And so now Facebook is banning things because alien sexual activity. Geller later cried. This just sounds like a joke, but it isn't. Geller later cropped the photo to only show the aliens above the waist, but still thinks it's real because streamers showed him where the prominent the prominent vagina was, and he believed it. All right, okay. Here's my question. Aren't all vaginas prominent? Like, isn't that pretty much that isn't that the elixir of life right there? The prominent vagina. I thought, that'd be a great name for a band, the prominent vaginas. And then the other question is, what is not a prominent vagina? Is that an obscure vagina? Does that exist too? It's like the special agents and the regular agents. Are there regular vaginas? I don't know. Apparently, this is prominent because it's an alien vagina. So, yeah, yeah, that's the story. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. And I just talked for 65 minutes. Holy shit! But I don't want to just do politics here. This is my previous radio shows and podcasts I did for a conservative news organization. And although we did vary outside of that, it was more politically oriented. And I want to get around to doing more non-political stuff here. So I don't mind doing the political thing at all, especially in these times. Like David Strom from Hot Air has been on this show before. And he said, and I can't even remember if he said this to me on air or off air. I can't remember, but I don't think he minds me saying this. He said, the way things are going right now, it's a pretty good time to be in conservative news analysis. It is because the other party is so fucking full of shit. And okay, and I have my liberal friends say, I'm just Democrat bashing. There was a time when the Republicans were full of shit too. Matter of fact, I'll tell you when it was. It was during the Clinton era. It's like and no one seems to have ever put this together, but the Clinton era is almost the flip opposite of the Trump era now that's happened 40 years later. Uh, Clinton was despised by conservatives, and then they did that impeachment thing. And now there was I talked about this, I think, last night even. I can't remember. There was a big difference there because Clinton actually did break the law, but it was a minor bullshit law. It was perjury about the fact he lied about having sex with an intern, that he lied in testimony to Congress. Well, of course he's going to lie, and he doesn't want his wife to find out. Now, okay, that's not maybe not an excuse. Yeah, he broke the law, but is that an impeachable offense? I don't think so. I don't. It's not like you got money, $10 million from some Chinese company or the Chinese government. It's not the same thing. You know, but the Republicans, I think the Republicans ended up looking like fools. I do. That was 30 years ago, and it's amazing how the tables kind of turned. That's the way I look at that. And at that time, I don't think it was probably way better to be a Democratic news analyst because the Republicans were fools and idiots. I'll say that straight out. You know, but not now. now it's now it's the opposite. It's our turn basically. So I want to thank you folks for watching. We don't have a guest tomorrow night. Oh, Patrick Moore is coming on Thursday night. I think we have people lined up for Monday. It's it is booking guests is daunting. I don't have a staff. I'm doing it myself. And the thing is, it's people's schedules and like I told you about Stan Gordon. Got a letter from Stan Gordon back. Love to be on the show. Yeah, January. Okay, I mean that's fine. We're definitely going to do it for sure. But yeah, we're looking at it's 4 months from now. So you know that's the way that kind of goes. So I have no idea what we're going to talk about tomorrow. Uh, we'll be on. I'd like you to call me. It would make me really, really happy. It really would. Tomorrow, not tonight. We're done here. You give me a call up, and yeah, life goes on, and we move forward. Thanks, everybody. Oh, wow. And also, of course, this is the part where you get to see our new end card. I think it's the third time we've used it. Here we go. Have a nice evening.